All right, here we go. We have Kevin Samuels on VladTV.
Here we go.
Here we go. Here we go. A lot of people have been asking for this.
All right.
Lot of people. A lot. At least on my end. I don't know about your end, but on my end, a lot of people have been asking.
Well, people have been asking me to where I'm going to go next or who shows, such and so forth. So people have been asking on my side too, so that's a good time to go ahead and get it out here, especially with everything that's going on right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's get into it. This is our first time sitting down, so I want to get into your whole story and start in the beginning.
All right.
So you were born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And I guess you had a single mother, and was your father around a lot or no?
My father was in Oklahoma City. He has, they never married. He has several children from other women. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. How many siblings did you have, on your mother's side?
I'm the only child.
Only child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, me too. Me
too.
Only
child syndrome.
All right, this explains a lot about us.
Yeah.
Okay, and your dad had a bunch of other kids. I mean, was he really in your life? Did you guys have a relationship or not really?
Back in the 70s, he came around, significant birthdays, Christmas from time to time. I mean, Papa was Rolling Stone. I knew him, but we really didn't have a father-son relationship like that. But that was pretty common in my neighborhood.
Well, how many kids did he have on his side?
Oh, God. I want to say upwards of 10. I don't know the exact number.
A lot of kids.
A lot of kids. Some I knew, some I know.
Okay. So you're being raised by a single mother, and was she struggling? Were you guys middle class? Were you guys upper class?
Far as I knew, we were okay, but like most people who lived in the quote unquote projects Oklahoma City, I just knew our surroundings. She first came out. Of course, she didn't know. She got pregnant while she was in college. She decided to drop out of college and have me. But we never got evicted. I wasn't homeless or anything else like that. Pretty typical childhood from a single parent household. So no struggling, no crazy origin story, what most people have.
Okay. So you graduate high school, I guess Millwood High?
Yes. Millwood High School.
And then you go to the University of Oklahoma,
mm-hmm.
and you studied chemical engineering.
Yes, I did.
Okay, why chemical engineering? Because I studied computer science, and I remember my AP chemistry classes that I just failed completely because it was just way too hard.
Well, I wanted to go to medical school. I studied chemical engineering because that's where the money was, the scholarships were. When I went to school my freshman year, Black Monday happened. So that's when the bottom fell out of the Wall Street, and everybody that was graduating was coming back from business, and they couldn't get jobs. So people in engineering were able to get internships and able to get employment after college. So because I had a scientific mind, it made sense at the time anyway.
Okay, and you graduated?
No.
Okay, you dropped out?
Dropped out, you could say, yeah, I had cancer.
Oh, you had cancer?
Yeah.
At what age?
21.
Wow, what kind of cancer?
Hodgkin's.
Okay, I'm not familiar. What is Hodgkin's exactly?
Familiar with, what was it? Hodgkin's is a type of lymphoma.
Okay.
Prevalent, strikes usually between the ages of 18 and 26, and then possibly in the late 40s. I want to say Mickey Mantle. You remember from me who Mickey Mantle is?
Yeah.
The men in his family had Hodgkin's, and he kind of attributed the way he lived because he thought he would get it too. So, yeah, changed a lot.
Okay, so how does a young man really get the news that they have cancer? And is this like a deadly form of cancer if it goes untreated, or?
It has one of the most highest cure rates, but like anything else, it can kill you. How do you deal with, what was the question now?
Well, I mean, how do you deal with that type of news being so young?
Like anything else, I mean, it's shocking. You weren't expecting it. Well, honestly, I could tell during one of the internships I was having, I wasn't able to do things I used to do. I couldn't eat a full meal. I always had this pain in my abdomen. And the sad part about it is because when I was in school and didn't have the right kind of insurance at the time, going to the local clinics, doctor actually tried to tell me I had an ulcer because he thought we were in there just trying to, get party drugs for the weekend or whatever. I actually had to kind of demand that I get an ultrasound done. And I walked into a local emergency room and said, I need to get this done, an MRI. And the tech came in and started. And then when she stopped and two doctors came in and we knew we were kind of in trouble. But they found a mass in my abdomen about the size of my foot. And after that, everything else just kind of got put on hold. When something like that happens, there's an entire procedure. They did a biopsy of it, and it came back what they thought benign, so they went in with traditional surgery. But after actually being operated on, I guess some of the pathology reports during surgery, I guess from what I remember, they actually said it started out malignant. So long and short of it, they closed me up because they shouldn't have operated in the first place. And then from that point, treated it with chemotherapy, like 8 months of chemo.
Okay, and ultimately you beat it?
Yeah, I'm still here.
How did that feel to have your last chemo session?
Well, I was ready to just try to get back on to life. At that age, it's kind of hard. Everybody else is planning to attack life. And at that point, you kind of recognize your own mortality. Getting your last chemo session, I wanted to just get on to the next phase because honestly, young people really don't know how to handle that kind of stuff. Friends and family members kind of are kind of just it freaks everybody out. I put it that way. So.
Okay, so you get past this, you get past your cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And although you went to school for chemical engineering, you decided to go different with your career. And you get into corporate sales.
Yeah. A lot of things changed after that. I was working as in a research lab. And I enjoyed the work, but a lot changed. I realized I didn't want to sit in the office like a lot of people did in engineering for the next 15 to 20 years. So the long and short of it is I've always enjoyed interacting with people, and I'm living in Houston after all this happens. My best friend's down there, single guys, new lease on life. And I decided to get a second job waiting tables at the Pappas Corporation. And that's kind of what led me into corporate sales because I got offered a job as a waiter.
Okay. All right. So then you joined corporate sales.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you were a business development manager for Office Depot for a while.
Yeah. But before that, I worked in .com, but that entire industry went boom and bust. WorldCom, MCI, all those little companies that were through there. So after all that fell apart, I ended up at Office Depot.
Okay. Then in 2009, you joined a media company.
Mm-hmm.
Super Media, IdeaArc Media.
IdeaArc, yeah.
IdeaArc. And seems like you kind of were figuring stuff out. I guess you worked for the Real Yellow Pages at one point, but eventually that led to you forming your own image consulting company.
Right.
Okay. Now, along the way, you were married twice?
Along the way, yeah.
Okay. How long was your first marriage?
So my high school sweetheart, we only married really about a little bit over a year. A little bit over a year.
Okay. Any kids from that?
One.
One child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why'd you get divorced?
We probably should have. It wasn't a good idea to get married in the first place. But, we had high school sweethearts. Like I tell oftentimes, every relationship has its ups and downs. We were better together as friends than actually as a couple. So And there was a lot of other stuff going on the inside too that I really don't want to get into on the camera. It's personal business.
Sure.
I would say that we have a great relationship. I always have. We've known each other since like 4th grade. So life happens to us all.
Okay, so you have your first marriage, lasts about a year, you have one child, and then you get married again. How much time passes between these marriages?
7 years. 7 years, 6, 7 years.
Okay. Any kids from the second marriage?
No.
Okay, so you just have one child, period.
Right.
How long did the second marriage last?
3 years. 3 years.
Why did that end?
Same reason most of them end, irreconcilable differences.
Okay.
There's nothing real salacious to tell about it. You just, you know.
Didn't work out.
Well, I mean, no one goes into marriage wanting to get a divorce, but you know.
Okay. Before we get into everything else, do you ever plan on getting married again, or are you happy single?
I'm happy, period. I'm happy, period. I mean, think about marriage is what you make it. I would say this. Early on, I would say that, you know, not seeing a lot of marriages come up. Like many times I talk to people on my show, you act on what you know and how you know how to do things. That's why I say I would never begrudge my ex-wives. Why things fell apart, we could talk for hours and hours, but I don't say anything negative about them because there's no reason to. I wish the people the best. And would I get married again? Sure. Well, I don't think anybody wants to live this life truly by themselves. We just don't really know how to get it done. Like my mother's generation, my mother and father weren't married, but my mother got married at 50. Her sisters didn't. But their previous generation, everyone was married, and they were married for 30 plus years. So the last generations from the 40, from baby boomers on forward, we're the ones that can't seem to get this stuff figured out. Everybody else seemed to get it done. That's what we're all trying to get figured out.
I agree. Okay, so you start a YouTube channel in 2015. And it does well, but then I believe last year you had a clip that started to go viral.
Okay.
And do you remember what clip that was? I think WorldStar picked it up.
The first clip WorldStar picked up, it was a short clip. There was a woman who called in and she was basically asking about what her chances were. That one didn't go viral. That was the first one, but the one most people are talking about is the whole average at best. That's what it's been called now, average at best.
Okay, right. You said you look average at best, and did you also say you're going to die alone?
She said she looked average. I agreed. And I said,
okay.
And that's what it gets shortened down to. It's a 23-minute interview. I said, typically, women like you, choosing trying to get something outside of their range, knowing it's outside of their range, knowing that you don't know these kind of men, don't know where these guys go, don't know what they want, but yet you're fixated on having them because you feel like you should have them because of your socioeconomic status, not a good chance you're going to find that person. And if you don't, you'll end up dying without one, meaning die alone. But it always gets shrunk down to average at best, die alone, because that's what makes videos go viral and trend.
Right, the headlines. I know all about this.
Yeah.
I know all about this. Okay. And I watched this clip, and, you know, for someone that really got to see your style for the first time, I mean, it's a bit shocking because you're telling women things that most people consider harsh. Now, are you trying to be harsh? Are you trying to be mean? I don't think so.
Who's most people?
But I think most of the general public are fairly shocked when they see you speaking to a woman in this way, when you say a woman is average at best.
When I agree with her. I mean, if you watch the clip, it was a 23-minute video. So, I mean, we're going to take a person out of a 23-minute video, a 7-minute portion, put on a video, WorldStar. Shout out to WorldStar, you've been good for me. But we're going to look at that. I mean, who can stand up to clips? I can take anybody out of context in a clip. But see, what tends to happen more than anything else is that clip started a conversation, and more women come and said, you know what, when I first saw this clip, I was shocked. Well, I want to say why we're shocked, because people don't tell women the truth these days. Men get told the truth all the time. Women have no problem telling a man, I don't want an average man. It happens every day on my show. TLC said they don't want no scrubs, and we have no problem telling average men, you ain't crap. But if I just happen to have the nerve to agree with the woman that says she's average, then I'm Satan. I think that's interesting.
Very much so. Very much so. Okay, and I've listened to a few of your interviews and the videos on your YouTube channel as well. And a lot of the focus of what you talk about is the high value man.
Mm-hmm.
Explain what that means.
Well, first off, high value man is not my concept. High value man has been with us forever. And what I did with high value man is I just put some parameters around it, because that term had been floating around for years. I looked across, this country, this political system, that political system, this system of government. And I looked and said, what are the men who separate themselves from other guys? What do they have in common? And they have several things in common. Now, this is irrespective of religion, morality, anything else like this, just basic stuff. High value men starts with money. Now, there are a lot of people who don't like that concept, but I didn't come up with the whole notion of a six-figure guy. This has been with us since 1985, when six figures first came into the mid-'80s, I'll say that, when it first came into popular media, popular culture. And then making that like $10,000 a month is a benchmark. And then making that amount of money for 3 to 5 years. Anybody can have a good year or two, but stringing it together implies some sort of consistency. Then after that, other high value men recognize you as a peer or a possible peer, having a life that's kind of what I call LinkedIn level, visible, meaning saying you're the VP of Mergers and Acquisitions at Goldman Sachs is different than saying I'm an entrepreneur. We know what one of those things means at a glance. Having a network of high value men and others, and being useful to others and the group. So those are 6 basic principles around which I've had a conversation. Now, of course, your mileage may vary. There may be people who think that you need to have other things in addition to those things. But it just kind of gave a framework to start a conversation. And why that became such a big issue is because of the notion that women tend to consolidate on the highest value man available, a term called hypergamy. So I'm just talking about things that have always been out there, just putting a kind of a context to it for the beginning of a conversation between men and women, because that ain't really happening these days.
Okay. And I think a lot of your conversations deal with women who feel like they want high value men, or they feel like they deserve a high value man. Mm-hmm. And during the course of the conversation, I feel like you let them know that they don't have whatever it takes that high value men are interested in. Is that fair?
Well, what I always ask is, what do you want? What do you want? And then what do the kind of men you want? And are you qualified to get it right now, or are you willing to do what it takes? See, when people can want what they want. I want, a Phantom. But when you go, either you have the money to afford it or not. It doesn't change the desire that you want it. You can put it up on your wall or whatever. And I don't judge what people say they want. And that seems to be the part of the conversations that turn contentious. Because oftentimes, like it or not, men get told every day where they rank. They get rejected all the time. Men know what they quote unquote qualify for. But women for the last 40 years have been told you can have it all of you, whenever you want, no matter how you are. And they've been given an unrealistic expectation of their actual sexual marketplace value, their actual ability to get it. But then we always talk about, let's look in your life and see where in your life have you been able to attract or deal with these kind of men on a long-term basis. And that's where the conversations tend to go. I think it's funny that when I was talking to men for the previous years about these similar concepts, it wasn't shocking. But it was when I started talking to women about the very things they say they want, then all of a sudden it became this media firestorm.
Well, there was an interview you did in March with a woman who called in. And the thing that people focused on was, I guess you told her that if she wants a certain type of man, she has to accept cheating because she's built like Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, I think that's really shortening up everything I say. I mean,
it's definitely shortening it up.
I mean,
absolutely.
So, I mean, the conversation you're talking about doesn't say you have to accept cheating. What I said is high value men have options. They don't cheat, they exercise options. Kind of like what Bill Gates showed us. You know, I don't think many people can say they're richer than Bill Gates, and Melinda accepted it just fine. So it's funny, when I said it, it was just like all the rage. But then when Bill Gates and Melinda said, hey, he's been kicking it with his ex-girlfriend, and I signed off on it. Bill Gates said exactly the same thing I've been saying about high value men. They came out and made a press statement. And where's the story at now? Nowhere. Because that's what happens with men of means, and it's possible. And the thing is, if you listen to my show, there are plenty of women who will call in and say, I have a high value husband and I don't worry about these kind of things. Or if my man made a certain amount of money, I turn my head the other way. This isn't new information. This has always happened with men of means and power and possibilities. Now, the woman who was built like Emmitt Smith, I said you weigh more than a running back. And that's a fact. She does. But why is that wrong?
Right. I guess that during the conversation, she told you that she was 5'8" and a size 16.
And 220 pounds.
220 pounds, right?
Which is more than Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders.
Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders, your running back size.
Which was actually, she was bigger than both of those guys.
Right.
I mean, is that a statement of fact, though? Yeah, Barry Sanders was 200, one was 200 and one was 218 pounds. And see, that's what I'm saying, that women can say, I don't want no scrubs. You know, people could say, if he can't buy you a Birkin bag, kick him to the curb. But if I just happen to say that you weigh more than men at your height, that's offensive. When did we become that world?
Well, it's offensive for men who like a certain type of woman. Some men are into BBWs. There is a whole market for that.
Really?
Right?
Show me where the high value men, after their high value, go after BBWs as the norm.
I mean, that's a good point.
That's the point.
A good point.
See,
I'm not going to argue that part.
We're so used to doing this PC kabuki dance that is confusing women. That's why do women call into my show? Because they've been told by so many charlatans, so many people telling them you can have it all, but then they go out into their world, they're in life, and they're like, I'm not getting the outcomes or results. That's why I have more women calling in saying, thank you. I had a woman last night breaking into tears saying, you saved my marriage. But that doesn't get reported. The stuff that women actually say on a daily basis about, you've helped me change the way I look at my husband, my marriage, my kids. I've gotten back with my ex-husband. I've gotten back with my baby daddy. That doesn't get reported. It's just hey, you said she looked like she was built was bigger than a running back. That's what gets reported.
Well, I think it was on No Jumper. And you talked about how you look at divorce rates overall and they're relatively high. But when you look at divorce rates for rich households, they're actually pretty low.
Lower, yeah.
Lower. Explain that.
Well, the stat was people over $250,000, the divorce rate tends to be about 20%. And it falls kind of in line with the high value thing because, like it or not, the females have evolved to be the more social of the group. And when you have a man who has a certain status, he tends to have a network, visibility, more things link you and tie you to a relationship than just your ability to get along with a man. And there tends to be more reason for women to stay. Now, there can be people that say it's because of the money. Causation and correlation are two different things, but you can't deny the fact that people with more tend to stay together longer, and their reasons are always theirs. But they're there.
Yeah, I mean, money fixes a lot of problems. Point blank, period. It doesn't fix every problem, but it fixes a lot of problems. It lubricates the machinery.
Yes, it gives you There's an old saying that money reveals the truth. So there's a reason why, whether you're Robert Baratheon in Game of Thrones and you got bastards all over the kingdom, he can do that because he's Robert Baratheon. He's the king. Or whether you are this person or that person, this person in the media with this amount of children, but you can't do that as readily if you're an average guy. And we see the truth. See, men accept these things. And women, why will a woman choose to line up to become one of 7 baby mamas versus being one of 1 for the plumber? I didn't make it. I just look at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, as someone who started out as a computer programmer,
Mm-hmm.
Went to school in Berkeley, got a good computer programming job, started my own business, doing technical recruiting, making good money, but still, someone who is not in entertainment, in the spotlight, whatever else. I remember the difficulty it was dating and finding certain types of women back then. Once I'm DJ Vlad, once VladTV is a household name in certain communities, mm-hmm. and you could look me up, you could Google me, you could figure things out about who I am, or you may have already been a fan of me when I met you. The interaction between women is completely different. I'm not even gonna say slightly different. I would say there's a 180-degree difference between the two. In fact, it's almost like the roles are reversed in a way, where I found more women trying to, chase after me as opposed to the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing of that is that it's not just that as well brings a confidence in a man where he feels that he could approach anyone he mm-hmm. wants with a level of confidence of like, hey, do you know who I am? Mm-hmm. If you don't, I'll tell you, which I think is a game changer also in the way that you interact with someone as opposed to just being like a regular guy trying to somehow talk your way into this woman's good graces.
Mm-hmm. So, in effect, you've just described the visibility component of being a high-value man, mm-hmm. Which is far more than just the money, because your network, because they can find you, LinkedIn level, because other men who are high-value recognize you as part of their inner circle, because now that you're an employer, you're useful to others and the group. You've done it for a consistent period of time. All those things are people may not like it, but it is that way. But I think the telling part is when you were the same man as computer programmer, when women say, I want a good average man. No, you don't. Most women tend to want the lifestyle and the things that come along with high value. And just because we're having that conversation and more women are saying this, it's like, well, that's superficial, that's shallow. No, it's human evolution. I mean, and I automatically don't look at someone in athletics, entertainment, or music and put them into that category of high value because their money comes different. It's a different scenario. It's far more your case to where you've actually decided to go from one place and you've made yourself into who you are now. And I think more power to you.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought about it the other day. I became DJ Vlad 20 years ago. I'm 47 right now. So almost half a life ago, I transformed into a different person in a way, although I was the same person. I still have the same first name.
Right.
I was always called Vlad, but now I'm DJ Vlad. Mm-hmm. And these days, 2-3 million people tune in to hear what I have to say. Chances are, if you are a hip hop fan, you've watched at least a few of my interviews.
Right.
And it changes the dynamic of it all. I feel like if I walk into a party, I could talk to any woman in there. I could walk up to any woman with full confidence, regardless of who she is, how she looks, whatever else. That was not the case with computer program Vlad. I was definitely a lot more nervous. I would not approach certain women. It was just a different dynamic. So as you
Are you a better man now?
No, I'm the same man.
Thank you.
Same man, same values.
Thank you.
Know, I'm older. I probably looked better back then.
Actually, men can hit their stride after 40, and your story is what men have been talking about for the longest. We know these things. Now, see, the thing is, there's only one DJ Vlad, and if you went to that party, how many women would stand in line, figuratively, to talk to you versus talking to the 20-year-ago version of you?
Right. Not that many.
That's my point.
Not that many. No one would be taking pictures with Vlad, the programmer, and tagging me on their Instagram and, whatever else. Because they also look at me as someone who could potentially make them a star or make them famous or make them go viral or whatever. So they want something out of me as well. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. There's a big
always
picture
been
here.
the same.
It's always been the same. And listen, I like it better over here than back there. I'll be honest.
Well, and that's the point. And see, men accept the reality. And the guys who are seeing you in their 20s, they're saying, I want to get to be like him. But men realize that there's a process. And sadly, if you have options like that, you get to pick from what you choose. And then when someone tells you, just to be socially acceptable, you need to accept a woman that you're not necessarily as attracted to for this or that, men are getting shamed for being able to exercise the same options that women demand they have. And there are countless stories to talk about this. And I don't want to say anybody's name on your platform, but you can go and look throughout Hollywood where women of one stature are trying to get men who are obviously on a different level than them, but the man's response is criticized or scrutinized far more than this person's audacity to think just because I make this, we're on the same level. That's not how we are. Never has been. Never has been. The late great Patrice O'Neal had a bit called, the king and queen system. He's like, the king can go get with the lowest barmaid and elevate her to the highest level in land, the queen. The queen, you just be the queen's husband. You can't automatically just become the king. We know these things.
Well, I believe, I forgot what interview this was on, but you actually rated Saweetie an adjustable 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Meaning that she can go from cute to pretty.
Right.
In that range, depending on, I guess, her
however
makeup,
she decides
her hair,
to leave her house.
clothes.
Yep. Anytime she wants to, she can turn the knob.
Okay. Well, number one, what did you think about the breakup that happened between Saweetie and Quavo? And ultimately, I remember I had Boosie on my show, and he just went off. I mean, he basically talked about how disrespectful it was for her to do an interview with her ex-boyfriend while she's still in a relationship with Quavo and talk about having a threesome with another guy.
Now, see, I will say I honestly didn't follow much of that, but I will say if that's the case, what I kind of remember is she went on a podcast or show or something and said some things that were going to probably be good in the moment, but it was a bad look for her relationship. That's why a lot of guys looked at it. I will say I wouldn't want a woman I'm dealing with to say something like that. But you kind of got to understand, but I also understand that women have been told, hey, no rules. They broke up. I think I recall something, I don't know if it's true or not, about cars coming back, this and that. I really don't keep up with a lot of that stuff because they live a different life than most people. But a lot of people were angry because I ranked her an adjustable 6. First off, I got reported, I said, is she 6? But I'm like, when did being average being an insult? When did saying a woman that's cute is an insult? When did saying a woman's pretty is an insult? It's like women today who will tell you they're a 10. And even if you put parameters on it, they'll say I'm a 10 because of my self-esteem and how I look at myself. That is not how the world works. You could tell let's go back to DJ Vlad 20 years ago. You could say you are the ish, but you couldn't get the results as DJ Vlad can today, no matter how great your self-esteem or confidence is. That's the world we live in because men get rejected often. Women, for the most part, are not used to being rejected or told the truth on a consistent basis. So a little bit hypersensitive, but the pandemic was a wake-up call for everybody, because no matter what people thought of themselves when they were at home, to the left or to the right, who was there with you? And that's what really kind of started focusing more women's mind, in my opinion, on outcomes they want, not just today, but in the future.
Well, when you talked about Saweetie, you said, I look at you fresh-faced, no makeup, your natural state. Mm-hmm. If you have ever seen her pictures, fresh-faced, natural state, she's a cute woman who can be pretty, but I don't think she's ever going to be considered to be beautiful or gorgeous.
Right. So when you talk about pretty, beautiful, or gorgeous, 8s, 9s, or 10s, those are the women. And see, I don't know why that's an insult, but you start looking at women on the cover of, let's say, People, most beautiful people in the world, supermodel levels. There's a distinction. There's a cutoff line somewhere. I don't know about you, but I've been to I've been to cattle calls, modeling calls. And if people think what I'm saying is harsh, there are channels right here on YouTube where there are women they'll start ranking you. Go into a swimsuit model call, where they take a marker and start drawing on you. Nope. And if it's not all right to say the line is drawn somewhere for somebody, then I guess what we're saying that everybody's equal. There's no differentiation. One thing I haven't heard, and maybe she hasn't said it, what she thinks of herself. Does she? I mean, a lot gets reported about what one guy says, but does she consider herself to be up in the top ends of beauty?
Well, I remember there's an interview she did where she said, that having a pretty face definitely opens doors, had opened doors for her and that type of thing. The interesting thing though about Saweetie is that, I saw old videos of Saweetie when she was first trying to rap, and she was like, rapping for people and stuff like that. This was before all the plastic surgery. This was, small boobs, relatively flat butt, not all the curves that you see these days. From your point of view, does plastic surgery, does that ultimately help or hurt women when it comes to relationships with men?
Now this is where it goes personal. In my personal opinion, there's something, it's all on a sliding scale. There's nips and tucks, slight adjustments. But we're getting to the point to where it's becoming comical. I live in Atlanta, and I'm looking at some women that have some of those comical proportions. Jessica Rabbit was a cartoon character for a reason. But now we're starting to see women who have these impossibly small waists, really large hip to waist ratio, really large butts. But what you're not seeing is a lot of these women where are their husbands? And who are they married to if they are married? I look at the outcome. Look on their left finger and say, are you married to a man that you value? And the answer probably would shock most people.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of an interesting type of thing, because you look on the internet and it seems like the girls with plastic surgery seem to be winning. Because when you look at a lot Nicki Minaj, Ari Fletcher, even Lori Harvey had plastic surgery. You see them with these superstar men. Mm-hmm. Now, most times they're not married, but, Saweetie, same thing with Quavo, et cetera, et cetera. They're usually not married, but they're with the guy. Sometimes they have a kid, with that man, little baby's, baby mother, I believe Jada, she's had some work done and so forth. They have a kid with this man. They're not married, but they're living the lavish lifestyle. They're showing off all their Dior and their Hermes bags and everything. And I think a lot of women say, oh, that's the key. That's the easy fix. I just need to have a huge ass, get a bunch of lipo. If my boobs are, kind of saggy, I'll perk them up. I'll go to DR, spend $20,000, $30,000, and then I'll go get a superstar and wear Dior and ball out. But I feel it's a little bit deceiving because you're right. These women are not married.
Right. So on my Instagram the other night, I had a woman who came in to my show and she fit that characteristic. And she said it herself. I dated rappers and sport athletes and all this other kind of stuff. And she's got the surgeries and everything else. But yet, if you listen to her, she says, I wish I'd have stayed with the guy that was a normal guy a few years ago that I had, because that's the guy I should have married. That's why I said I put athletes, entertainers, and musicians over here, and I look at most people, and I look at the outcomes. If the outcome you want is to be married with children, if that's what you say you want, who's getting that done? And I think what we're saying is a lot of mixed messages are getting sent out to women. So when I come out and say something that we talk about on the basketball court, in the barbershop, in the gym, at Buffalo Wild Wings, amongst men that we accept to be true, it's shocking. It's savage. It's like, oh my God. And it's like, well, who do you think these boyfriends and husbands are going to come from? They're not going to come from this infinitesimally small group of musicians, entertainers, and athletes. It's going to come from the regular guys over here, or the above average guys over here, or the high value guys over here. This is where the relationships are going to come from.
Well, I mean, gearing up for this interview, I did a little poll on my website. Well, sorry, on Twitter. And got about 1,000 votes. I said, who's the hottest girl in the game right now? I added Chloe Bailey, Lori Harvey, Ari Fletcher, and Megan Thee Stallion.
Okay.
It was somewhat close. Megan got 33%, Lori Harvey got 28%, Chloe Bailey got 28%, Ari got 11%.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting that Ari is the only one on this list with kids.
Right.
I don't know if that plays a role or not. Who knows? But Megan Thee Stallion is slightly in first place by about 5 percentage points.
Okay.
If you rated Saweetie a 6, what would you rate Megan?
Have I ever seen her without makeup? I would give her a 6. She's cute. She's cute to me.
Megan's a 6.
And that's the thing. Cute, but I would also, and if you look at my scale, I look at things from, because I try not to use people who are present because it has an actual effect on people's brand. I try to use people back in the 70s and 60s and 50s before plastic surgery and makeup and all that stuff were really a big thing. Most of your actresses were cute and pretty. They weren't supermodel Diane Carroll, Dorothy Dandridge kind of people. Those were infinitesimally small, not even divas. What were they called? Starlets back then. There weren't that many of them. I don't know how you framed the question. You think you asked who's the hottest in the game right now?
Yeah.
I think on my show, I would say, which would you pick for a wife? You get a vastly different answer than who's the hottest in the game. See, to me, who's the hottest in the game right now, who you want to kick it with, hook up with, slide in their DM, take on a trip. But that's a very different question when you say, who do you want to have your last name be the mother of your children and pass forward your legacy? And that's more of the question when men are looking, and that's kind of more of the conversation outcomes that we tend to have more than short term. See, short term is no problem. But long term, the calculus becomes different.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I interviewed Swizz Beatz, and he had been married to Alicia Keys for a little while. And it's the happiest I've ever seen him. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was ecstatic. He said he's not interested in anyone else. Not only does he look at her the most beautiful and accomplished woman he's ever been with, but also about how nice she is and how she never speaks ill of anyone. And he seems sincerely happy from my point of view. Jay-Z and Beyonce seems like they're happy from the outside looking in. Now, I think you rated Beyonce, like an 8? Mm-hmm. Where would you rate Lori Harvey?
You got a picture of her? You got a picture of Lori Harvey?
Sure.
And the funny thing is, Beyonce, this whole high value men thing, I also did a broadcast. If it's good enough for Beyonce, it should be good enough for you.
So you've taken a look at Lori Harvey. What did you think? How would you rate her?
I give her an 8. Give her an 8. Mm-hmm.
Pretty high up there.
She's pretty.
You know, she's still a young girl, early 20s. I mean, her dad or her stepdad is Steve Harvey.
Right.
Career-wise, I'm not quite sure what she's doing, but, you know, she seems to be having a good time. And what's interesting about Lori, because she's really been in a lot of the spotlight, especially in VladTV world. And I had Boosie on here recently. And his thing was this. He said, yes, Lori Harvey's a very pretty girl and so forth. But in the past year, she's dated Trey Songz, Future, Diddy's son, you know, now Michael B. Jordan. There's a couple other, I think there's like a race car driver thrown in there somewhere and so forth. And a lot of people got really upset. But his thing is, listen, if you're okay with your daughter sleeping with 5, 6, 7 guys in a 6-month, you know, time span that are all in the same industry, well, then I can't say anything. But for him, that is not a goal for his daughter, you know, and he's also doesn't like the fact that she gets celebrated. Oh yeah, Lori's living her life. She's sleeping with whoever she wants to do, you know, wants to sleep with. But the women whose men end up cheating on them and they stay with the man, you know, like Lil Baby's baby mother.
Okay.
A lot of women call them stupid. Oh, you're stupid for staying, girl.
Right.
You know, you're stupid for staying with that man when he's disrespecting you like that. What is your take about this whole situation?
So if I understand it, that Lori's getting celebrated for living her best life.
Right.
But then the woman who decides to stay with a man who exercises options or cheated are called fools.
Right.
Because that's the double message that women get. And that's part of the confusion. We celebrate women's independence as long as they're single. But a woman can't make an independent decision to stay with a man that makes her a fool. How many people said Beyonce should leave Jay-Z? And that would have been dumb. See, we celebrate things that go opposite of what many women want. Many women want to be with one man and to build something. So what are we ultimately telling women? That, hey, get out here, do your thing, and then come to my show and listen to women who were able to do that. And then after age 35 or so, recognize that you've had a lot of dealings with men, you've had a lot of great life, but do you have that value, the man that you value and you're building a life or legacy with? And most don't. And what I hear more than anything else is women have been told they can have it all, but it's about choices. So we should stop, and it's one thing, we should stop demonizing people who decide to stay in relationships and make it work. That's the very thing that so many people say they want. I want that old school love, that 30, 40, 50-year marriage. Well, that's going to come with a lot of crap. I mean, right. I think it's funny how many people met their, whole different side of the family at Big Daddy's funeral. Because Big Mama knew how to keep her mouth closed because she understood that marriage was not about the headlines. Marriage was about duty, respect, honor, something bigger than yourselves. We're telling women to be selfish at the disregard of everything else, and we wonder why stuff is falling apart. Well, because the reality is most men, this is what kind of shocked me, most men want relationships. Most men want marriage. Who's leaving relationships? When they end up, women are walking out of the door 70 to 90% of the time. And who are they listening to? Women. How's that helping them?
Right. I mean, when I look at most successful marriages, there's usually a higher calling in that marriage. It's not about who's sleeping with who.
The family crest.
Sometimes the guy's messing around, sometimes the girl's messing around.
Yes.
And sometimes they both know about it.
Yes.
But there's children at stake. there is a business at stake. There is legacy at stake. So they put aside whatever temporary things go on and stay together because there's a bigger picture here.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't quite get that. And I think a lot of people go into marriage saying, okay, I'm attracted to this person right now. I'm sexually attracted. I like sleeping with the person. But at some point, that's probably going to fade away.
Yes.
And then what do you have? And if the relationship is just based on sex, it's just not going to last. Not forever.
Nope.
You'll have a good run. But at some point, you know, you're left with a person. And I think what also happens is, in the same way that women are quote unquote groupies of certain types of men, men are groupies for certain types of women.
Okay.
So men will pursue, how I said earlier, the hot girl. You know, Lori Harvey is the hot girl right now. Chloe Bailey is one of the hot girls right now. You love the idea of that person. You see them on Instagram. There's a lot of Photoshop and filters that go on with that. That's not really how the person looks.
Nope.
That's not really how their body or face really looks. You don't really know what their personality is like. You don't know what their habits are like. So you want to, you know, and I'm not just talking about the big, you know, whoever that is in your life. Maybe it's the local hot girl in your high school or your college or whatever. You get obsessed and you become a groupie of this person. And then when you finally deal with that person, you realize, I was just in love with the idea.
Right.
You know, as opposed to the reality of it. Like, for example, I think that's what happened with Kim and Kanye. I think Kanye loved the idea of having the hottest chick, you know, out there,
right,
the most desirable woman, period, you know, who I think, you know, and Kim, I think really changed the way we look at beauty. Before Kim, a voluptuous white girl wasn't really celebrated like that.
Right.
Not really, not all across the board.
Well,
you know,
I would put it this, one, I wouldn't be surprised if they get back together. Put a pause there, because they have so much stuff outside of what they already have. And when you have, from what I understand, Kanye is a bit of a complex personality.
Oh, yeah.
So if she's able to deal with him, you know, I get to talk to more women who have been on the side of that 8, 9, or 10, even the adjustable 6 or higher, who have had access to all of these men, and they're saying, I wish I'd have stayed with the guy I met earlier. And what we're ultimately doing is we have these conversations about, I have that conversation about sex. All right, what are you willing to give up if attraction wasn't there? And see, the conversations we tend to have are conversations that are about longevity, not just the short-term stuff. And because those things aren't being talked about a lot, it makes us a viral moment, some interesting conversations. But I think what we're doing more than anything else is getting the conversation started between men and women. And the refreshing thing about my show is it is obvious that men want women. They want to be married. And it's obvious that many women are saying, I want to have a relationship. We just don't know how. We've had the last 40, 50 years tout the individual, tout do what you want, live your best life, and that kind of stuff. And see, how do we correct this to get the outcomes you possibly want if you want something different? And that's what it really comes down to. I talk to a lot of women. What do you want? I don't judge what it is you want. I don't judge any of that. But can you get it? And as much as we talk about high value men, I also have a very thing that I really dislike is when women come onto my show and crap on average guys. That happens every week. And that's when I tend to get upset, because I'm sitting here being told, you have to say it this way or that way, or you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. But then you have women who are looking at men who are firefighters, policemen, military, computer programming, science, engineering, technology, and math. They're calling them lame, corny, goofy, dusty, this, that. average guys getting crapped on. And I'm like, now, wait a minute. Everybody can't be this high value man. There are only so many of these guys. What about the rest of them? And when we can make average guys cool and make average looking women who are average looking or cute women who are cute women not feel like they're losing something or settling for getting with people who are around their same level, then we got a little progress.
Well, you're on a podcast, and on the podcast were a few girls who did OnlyFans. Mm-hmm. And in the process of the conversation, 2 of the girls stormed off.
Yeah.
Explain from your point of view why they stormed off.
They stormed off because the truth was too much for them to handle. They were good with it when they were getting the adoration, when they called themselves entrepreneurs. I'm a business owner and this and that. And I just started asking, if you're an entrepreneur, what kind of business? You making this money in investing? Start asking questions, and because they couldn't answer the questions, they found it offensive. They found it offensive that a man could even. One woman said, "Who are you to judge? You shouldn't, a single man or women, you shouldn't judge what women do." It's like, well, wait a minute. Men built the world that we live in for the most part. Yes, women have had their contributions, but what average men have done, we're in New York City. These buildings were not built by Wall Street executives. They were built by blue-collar construction workers. The very men that these women look down upon today, but they'll take their OnlyFans dollars. So a lot of these women, when you just ask questions about what you should get, what you should deserve, they don't feel as though they have anything to give they don't have to answer to a guy, anything. And I say, okay, fine. But we start having that conversation. And when I asked, what are you going to do when the OnlyFans money dries up? Because I related it to the adult industry. There's always going to be a hot new starlet. You know, Jenna Jameson was she changed the game. But there was a time where she became, not a has-been, or she wasn't a hot new girl. And just like in that business, they go from doing certain kind of scenes to where they'll start doing other kind of scenes, different kind of scenes. I'm like, that always happens. Strip clubs, adult dancing, it always happens in a sexualized business. What are you going to do? They got upset because it was like, well, that's not going to happen. I'll always be hot. I'm like, well, no, you won't. And if you're not planning for this, or if OnlyFans stops, the whole quote was, when OnlyFans ends, Subway will be hiring. Because the plan wasn't ever anything beyond, I'm going to continue to sell my youth, my beauty. I will always be on top. There will never be anybody bigger than me. And don't question why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's my money and I'm a woman, hear me roar. And I didn't see why it was so offensive, but it made for a good video clip.
Well, in the clip, you said, we built the goddamn world you live in. The platform you're on is built by men. Nobody made this about men or women.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Well, I want to say this. I mean, when you look at, for example, construction workers, 90% of them are probably men. That's just an area that men historically have, moved into. Not to say that women can't do pretty much the same job these days with machinery and whatever else, but you're right. Men are mostly construction workers. When I look at society as a whole, like, for example, when I look at my business, the only executive of my company is a woman, a Black woman at that. Women have been extremely key into the building of VladTV over the years. When I worked in software companies, there were women executives, there were female, software engineers and so forth. And even though women may not be as hands-on in business as, it's not 50-50 necessarily, but I feel that women are extremely key to the building of society. And in fact, even the motivation for men to do what they do is usually for women. You take women out of the equation and men will not be as motivated.
Granted. But that's not the question. See, the question is not, are women important? It's relative contribution. See, it's like the whole wage gap. If you take the wage gap the way it's calculated, women's hours worked, men's hours worked, divide by the number, and it comes up with a number of, there's a wage gap. But what it doesn't account for It's multivariate analysis. And when we have these conversations about gender, it tends to be univariate, one way. We don't take into consideration that women, just like women want higher representation at the upper levels of corporations, right? Okay, then I want you to have higher representation at the lower levels too. You need to be digging ditches. You need to be trashmen. They only want the representation at the higher end. But you don't want it at the lower end. And see, that's how we tend to do things. We look at it in the best case scenario. Yes, there are women who are valuable in corporations, this, that, but 6% of women in this country earn over $100,000. 6. And in your line, STEM, science, engineering, technology, and math, it is known that colleges and universities are struggling to get more women into these programs. So while, yes, after companies are built, can women come in, are women coming in and doing these things? Yes, but who's taking the risk building these organizations? And overwhelmingly, it's men. Overwhelmingly. Before a woman could step into the executive position, it took DJ Vlad to build it. And all I'm trying to get women to do is understand that the very guy 20 years ago that you probably wouldn't look at is the guy you need to be able to have a little bit more vision and say, well, if I get with him now and I stick with him now while I'm building with him now, I can reap all the benefits later. This is the problem. Most women say they want men who are high value, but they don't want to do the work when they're average looking. See, Bill and Melinda got together young, so she got the benefits later on. But if you want to not have to build a bob or build a boo, you want it later, then great. You're going to have to deal with a much more competitive situation. So either way, it still works.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Melinda Gates got with Bill when he was already like a billionaire. You know, she was working at Microsoft as like a manager, but he was the CEO and founder of Microsoft when she met him.
I was thinking about his girlfriend. So, granted, but you know, the story still, the premise still sticks though. It's never about devaluing women's importance. See, what we've done so much is we overvalue it. We just had Mother's Day. Churches were full, restaurants are full. Father's Day is about to come up. Come on, man. You'll have women celebrating their second Father's Day, and that's the imbalance. See, we're so busy trying to pat women on the back. What about the guys, man? And that's what my show does. It's the first time when I'm walking out in the streets, men are like, thank you, thank you, thank you. On the way over here, I had to take 6 pictures. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Uber driver, cab driver, this guy, that guy. Because it's out of balance, Vlad. That's all I'm saying. It's massively out of balance. And instead of trying to make sure that all women are getting their credit, can we look at the amount of credit guys are getting? And is the average guy or even the above average guy, or are men getting anything? And you'll hear that, well, you've gotten it for your entire life. Now it's our turn. I disagree. That's what makes my show good, because I'm willing to have the conversation.
Well, I mean, I think to be fair, men have not just had an advantage their entire lives. I think this goes back thousands of years. I mean, in general, men have had an edge when it comes to society over women. It just is what it is.
Okay,
I mean,
should we though? Should we?
Should we what?
Should men have an advantage?
Well, I'll say this. I'll say that when you look at, for example, certain societies, like certain countries in the Middle East, where women are not allowed to work at all, or even drive cars or go to college or whatever, those countries suffer compared to the countries that are first world that actually embrace women into the workforce. Yeah, I think it's a huge loss when you take women out of the equation.
And if you look at the Netherlands, where they're the more egalitarian society in the world, and they've let people do them things, and women and men have sorted themselves into their positions nicely. Men tend to do more on the science, engineering, technology, infrastructure side. Women tend to do more on the social work, retail, administrative side. Men and women know how to do these things. So we tend to go towards these extremes. And what I'm saying is men and women are different for a reason. Yes, women have their place, but the place of a man has been devalued so much to where even just trying to say that men deserve anything is almost offensive, where we feel like we got to balance it, that men have had an advantage. You mean men have had an advantage in the world that men built? Who built it? Who goes to war? Who, when you go out and kill the mastodon or this or that, who protects it? The very things that keep the world running. I've had that show. Okay, take it away from my show. Okay, Bear Grylls, season 2, The Island. Men on one island, women on another island, and just see what happens when women and men are dropped into nature. Women would have died. Men almost built the damn internet. I'm just kidding. But come on, we know these things. But it's like, you can't say that. You can't say it. We got to keep a balance, because you know why? Because women are the greater consumers and they spend more and this and that. And I get it. And I'm not trying to devalue what women do, but what I think is, what I've seen is there are only certain men getting credit. Like if you ask this question, what percentage of men are having sex or having children? Most women get that number off because they're looking at the kind of men they want. When 40% of men on this planet will probably never have kids. In our community, 51% of men are single and childless. The greater majority of kids are made by a small group of men. They're the ones with all the access and the legacy. But the other guys are the ones that continue to get the world built and run. Little balance, that's all.
That's an interesting point. Never thought about that. I never thought about that. Because technically anyone could have a kid. Anyone could have a baby.
That's it.
It doesn't take a certain amount of money in your bank account.
Ooh.
You know, I remember T.K. Kirkland, you know, who's a regular on my show, said that women should have a rule that if a man doesn't have at least $50,000 in their bank account, he should not be allowed to have sex.
Right.
You know, he shouldn't be allowed to ruin your life, you know, and give you a baby and not be able to really support it if he doesn't have a certain amount of money put aside.
I want to say in Memphis, there was a story that got a lot of traction, that between 3 men, they had upwards of 70 children. And the thing is, these women were going into having relationships with these guys. Could they afford these children? No. But all these women knew about one another. Well, all right. What message does that send to guys? What message does that send to men? And that's what I think anything else. For the women who are outraged, step outside of yourself and ask about, who do you want your brother, your son? And that's what I tend to do a lot of times with women. Would you want your brother or your son to deal with the kind of woman that you are, or the kind of women that they're coming out? And almost all the time they're like, I'm like, well, what do you think they're going to pick from as far as a dating market? See, self-awareness, humility, gratitude, empathy. Shout out to Gary Vee. I think I got me. Yeah. And there's some other things in there too. But we have to start understanding that women have to start understanding where men are coming from, because like it or not, ladies, you control access to sex and you decide when a life is brought into this world. You get the end choice. Men control access to relationships and marriage. And if the marital rate, if men aren't getting married, you got to look at it as a consumer. You got to give the market what they want, or they're not buying. Men are just not purchasing marriage in the same level as they were. And we, in society, far too long, we've been saying it's because you men are bad. Well, ask the consumer what they want and then go from there. That's all I'm saying.
Well, last month, or I guess early this month, you and Umar Johnson started going back and forth.
He responded. He made a video and responded to something. He didn't say directly to me, but I got the context.
Okay. What was that about?
If I have to guess, over the course of my shows, I've oftentimes had women call in and say, we don't like your tone. We don't like your tone. We don't like your tone. And when I say, all right, if you don't like my tone, who does it better? And on 2 or 3 occasions, women have called in and said, we prefer like Dr. Umar Johnson. And I joked. And one time I made a clip. I was like, so you want me to talk to you like Dr. Umar Johnson? And I kind of did an impression of him and some guys who were kind of in his sector. Because I don't have any problem with Dr. Umar Johnson. What's funny is he and I probably agree on the majority of things. We disagree on some things. But we're far more aligned. But if I had to guess, people have been trying to get folks to come at me. So I would guess that probably got shown to him. And taken out of context, I can see how it kind of been insulting. And my point of making that reference was not to say that he's a bad person. My point was to say that the reason you allow, if I had like 2 kids and I weren't married to their mother, I get roasted for that. You know, they're pulling my high school pictures and everybody's trying to call me gay. I'm like, they're just trying to make up everything in the world. I'm like, well, so what you're showing is if a man tells you or talks to you in a way that you like it, a lot of stuff is excusable. But if a man just happens to say 2 + 2 is 4, here's the facts, data, and statistics, look at it yourself, then you get mad and say, you're bad and we got to destroy you. So we don't have any problem. We don't have any beef. I don't have a problem with him.
Yeah, well, I've interviewed Umar before. Interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting guy. I mean, I'm not sure about the whole school that he's building. That to me was sort of the sketchy part where he took a bunch of money for a school. And I'm not sure if it exists or not. Maybe it does exist at this point and, you know, everything is, you know, fair. But the one thing he said about you, he said, I can't appreciate black men trying to make $1 off of making black women feel bad. And it seems like when you have, you know, your videos, most of the women who come on the show that you talk to are black women. So do you feel that it's unfair that people are saying that you make black women feel bad?
Well, he didn't make that statement directly to me. He made that to that sector of YouTube. I guess the inference is. And let me retract that. My show is funded primarily by men. And talking about making people feel, I don't make you feel anything. You're in control of your own emotions. I think that's an unfair characterization by anything else, because if we flip that up, there are people who make money off of making women feel good and lie to them. There are people who openly pander to women, telling them everything is okay, and live false lives in their face, and women can see this and continue to do it. So I always say judge things on the outcome. Like I said, I've had more women, there have been more videos on YouTube saying Kevin Samuels has saved my marriage, I'm better, I'm married today because of Kevin Samuels' advice works. I talk about, you know, this group I had on Facebook where people are getting together. People can focus on what they want to. But one thing I don't do is I'm not into judging how somebody makes their money. That's out of bounds. How money is made is irrelevant, because where I come from, that's called pocket watching. And why are we talking about somebody's money? We're all here to make money, and I make no bones about it. I don't do stuff that, if you're good at something, why do it for free? But to say you can't respect that, if that's what you think, then vote with your eyeballs and don't watch. But I think we need to be careful when we say those kind of things, because the next person it could very well be is you. Now, as far as feelings, I will say this again. It's all on what you choose to focus on. The videos where I'm sitting there empathetically talking to somebody, giving different kind of advice, different kind of points of view, doesn't get talked about. So I will give most people benefit of doubt or a challenge. If you don't watch my broadcast from end to end, then you really probably don't. If you're judging me on clips or whatever, no one can stand up to that.
Well, the Griot wrote an article about you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to read it?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So in the article, it says, with no background in marriage and relationship therapy, psychology, gender-related issues, or anything relevant to his platform, he spews out quote unquote advice devoid of social context. He blatantly ignores gender and racial socialization and refuses to address the history of racist, sexist ideals or the role of societal oppression in the way Black women are viewed. He perpetuates deep-seated and inherently flawed myths and stereotypes of Black women. These viewpoints only serve to confirm that Black women lack value outside of their sex appeal.
It's an opinion
you read
piece.
That before?
It's an opinion piece.
It is.
It's an opinion piece. And the thing is, I'm not going to argue someone's opinion because, again, it's rooted in their point of view. When I hear stuff like that, go ahead and come out and say, I just don't like what he's saying. You don't have to. And the thing is, you don't have to. But what I'm more interested in is, why don't these people who write these pieces look at what the people who watch the show, the women who watch the show, the very women these people claim to be championing, they come out night after night, they write in the comment section. And one of the things is, I can't understand why they keep coming back. Well, because they're getting something. They're getting something that they haven't been able to get for the longest, and that's an objective truth. Now, and I think it's funny that all of a sudden I have to be a Harvard or Rhodes Scholar in relationships. We mentioned Lori Harvey many times. Her stepfather, Steve, he does the same thing. Does anyone question? He's a comedian, isn't he? Mm-hmm. I don't think he has any background, and I don't think he has a doctorate in any of this stuff. But see, that's the thing. When we disagree with the man, we go straight to ad hominems. And things like this are just attacks against the person. And you can get through a lot of stuff rooted in that, attacks against the person. Judge things on the outcome. And if what these people who have an issue with what I'm saying, if they got a better outcome, talk about that. Talk about your solution. Talk about what you need to talk about and let the market decide. But that's the point. The market's not listening to that same stuff anymore because it doesn't appear to be getting the outcomes.
Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned Steve Harvey. He wrote a celebrated book on relationships that was made into a movie, Think Like a Man. He's on his third marriage.
But like I said, when you're telling the market or we telling women what they want to hear, your background doesn't matter. But when you're telling them what they don't want to hear, we gotta look at your progress reports. You gotta look at your high school transcripts and who is this? This is nothing new.
Well, you touched on the whole gay rumor thing. And there was a video where you were online and it somehow kind of cut to a scene of a man. There was a man sleeping in bed, and then it cut back, and I don't know. It just doesn't really make sense to me at all. So maybe you could explain that video and kind of clear it all up.
Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to just say, I said this the other day, and what problem do these people have with somebody being gay? I mean, I've said it last night. The LGBTQ community, y'all are on the clock because the sheer amount of gay bashing, gay innuendos, gay slurs, hate speech against gays, why is that allowed to persist? Why is that allowed to persist against me? If you want to say that I'm gay, then is that not out of bounds? Is that not a protected group? So the people who keep saying these things, I'm asking, where's the LGBTQ community in this whole thing? Or is it okay when it's a heterosexual man and it's being used as a gay slur? So you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. So you're gonna have to pick. So by them writing that article, by them doing all this other kind of stuff, they've injected something else. They did the same thing to Kwame Brown yesterday. Kwame Brown was liked by certain people, but then all of a sudden something didn't happen the way they wanted to, and all of a sudden start throwing gay stuff at him. This happens too often to Black men. The destruction of the Black male image because you're saying something that they don't like. We're going to minimize you. We're going to disparage you. We're going to discredit you. We're going to try to humiliate you, and we're going to try to humiliate you by calling you gay. I've addressed this countless times, but then you can have a show where I have a Zoom line where you can click on Zoom, and if you've ever been on a Zoom call, when someone pops up, their photo is there. And people can switch their photos and things like that. But I also use another software to where it's their photo comes up and they're in the green room. Their photo, like what I'm looking at, is kind of grayed out. And if you're running a show, if you click the wrong button, something can come up. That person's photo can be there. That person's picture can be there. That was a person that was in a call queue. Now, was that the actual person who had fallen asleep? I don't know. Was that a photo that person put up? I don't know. But I talked about this thing in show, real time. That person had gone from trolling me on one platform to where a woman was even like, who is that person? I was like, don't worry about him. He calls all the time. I announced that. It's still up now. She's like, well, I didn't know what to do. I was like, just don't pay him any attention. And I talked about it. Then as I get on to the next part, this person comes up and I'm like, this person's back again. And when I clicked it off, I think nothing of it. I wake up and it's everywhere. It's purposely, deliberately taken out of context to perpetuate a narrative, to smear a black man with being gay. So what I'm gonna say is this, where's the LGBT community in this? Because it's up there for anybody who wants to see it. And are we actually saying that if I were, and if people, the funny thing is, Vlad, if people really thought I was gay, they wouldn't be coming at me like this. Because they'd have to deal with that very LGBT community. They'd have to deal with that community. So by the fact that they're coming after me this way, they know they don't think that. But you can't play both ways.
I've had gay rumors. I almost feel like that's a sign of making it. Like, you haven't really made it unless someone comes out and claims that you're gay.
Well,
it just is what it is.
But, it's one, and like I said, in this whole cancel culture, people are having to go back to apologize for tweets they made 12 years ago when it was okay to even say something like this on South Park or a movie or this and that. When you actually have people with platforms, media outlets, blog sites running with a story like this. This was mentioned on a popular morning show. Who hurt him? Does he like men or like women? Like, so we play like this with people's brand and sexuality for what? All of this because I'm saying truths that men agree with. And you may not like my point of view, but to sit there and do the very thing you're saying that I should not do is hypocritical.
Well, yeah. And it starts a whole narrative of, well, he bashes women because he's secretly gay and he's in the closet and he hates women and so forth. And then these things start to kind of create a conspiracy theory of their own. And it just is what it is. It's just a part of being a public figure to a certain degree. Well,
I don't know. No. See, it's funny. So if you care about women so much, then what about my black mother? What about my black daughter who has to hear this stuff all the time? And that's what I think why Brother Brown, Kwame Brown, was so big. He's like, enough of this crap. You can't keep bashing somebody for having consensual conversations. My conversations happen live, real time, unedited, with consenting adults in the view of the public. Nothing's hidden, nothing's edited. So if you have a problem with it, stop watching. But what you're trying to do is basically say, I don't like what you're doing. Then vote with your eyeballs, go somewhere else. But who made you God? Who made you, who said you get to choose what people find entertaining, where they get their value? Or is it that you really just want them where you are? See, a lot of this stuff rises to, you got content creators, media platforms. This rises to lots of legal levels. And that's what's going to start happening in these sectors, because you start making these kind of claims, you can't do that. The New York Times can't say something about the Washington Post. You got to have, you have to have your sources. And here's the thing, what they have not been able to come out and do is substantiating this stuff. I've talked about it over and over and over again, to the point to now where I've said it, the LGBT community, y'all on the clock, because you see what's happening. And if you've had to deal with it, well, if they can defend people who are in their community, if people are trying to say Vlad is gay, well, then shouldn't they be defending you too? Because I guess Vlad, if you say people have said that about you, maybe you were in the closet or something like that. Do you not deserve to be protected just as much? Or do you have to openly fly the flag before they come out and you see what we're talking about? It only goes one way. It only goes one way against heterosexual men.
Yeah, and I think what people really need to realize is that, social media is still relatively a new thing in the history of mankind. Media itself has always been, historically, there's only been a few media outlets. They've had to cater to as many people as possible because there's only a few channels on TV, there's only a few, newspapers, there's only a few magazines. You try to catch as many human beings as possible to subscribe or watch and so forth. With new media, which is something that I started 13 years ago, I didn't start it, but VladTV started in the era of new media.
Right.
I quickly realized that it doesn't matter if I get the mainstream. I have a very loyal audience. And that audience, and I look at my statistics and I look at my, my demographics and everything, is a 90% male audience, age 18 to 35, located in certain cities, mostly New York, Houston, Los Angeles, Chicago, and so forth. A large African-American audience, a large Spanish audience, also, a large, white audience, although not as big as those other audiences. So I've had to put myself in the mind state this whole time of I'm creating content for my core audience. Now, I remember there was a situation where I had a female employee who said, I don't like the type of stuff you're putting out there. You need to do more of this type of stuff. Where it's like, well, but this isn't created for you.
Right.
What we create is not meant for you to consume. You're only 10% of our audience. So I can't cater, I can't put, makeup tips on my website or do videos about that because my audience doesn't watch that shit.
Right.
Men have no interest in that. So I can't have more kind of demographic type, choices in what we do and cater to women and cater to kids and so forth. Because those aren't people who watch my platform. So I have to create content for my platform. I've been doing it for 13 years. It's built a significant business. We have 12 employees. We have a production company. We have multiple studios. It's worked for us. If you don't like it, and there's lots of people who despise VladTV, who feel we need to be canceled and obliterated and no one should ever come to our platform and the world would be a better place without us. And that's fine. That is their platform catering to their audience, saying those things. And everyone in their comments like, yeah, we agree with you. It doesn't have any effect on us.
Right.
We still do great, but we have to focus on what it is. And I think that you're kind of in the same type of boat where you figured out over the years what reacts with the people who watch you. And that's going to piss a lot of people off. And that's okay because we're in a world where you could have a very specialized type of media outlet that caters to people that really, are super fans of this. And you don't have to make everyone happy, and you never will anyways.
No, and the thing is, men's content for men has been mischaracterized as you're a bunch of misogynist, woman-hating, incel, this, that, can't get a woman. I was like, no, this is the same stuff men have been talking about anytime men are together. We rank women. Hey, man. Back, it depends on how old you are, Charlie's Angels, which angel was hotter? Farrah Fawcett, Linda Carter. We do these things. So when I've been on other platforms and people who are around a lot of men understand they do this stuff, but, my audience is primarily men, and it is rare for a lot of men to see then a black man sitting on camera who has the nerve to talk about men's and women's relationship stuff, but then also talk about black folks. Our stuff and how, well, it may be in general have a lot to do with men and women. What about our more unique situation? I'll talk about both of them. And I've come along in a place where a lot of guys didn't exist. But before I was around, there was the larger manosphere, there's the black manosphere. There are content creators everywhere. And for the most part, what you're starting to hear is your uncle, your cousin, your brother, men who have felt like they have not had a voice, could not even be honest or tell the truth without fear of being canceled, saying thank you. And you're starting to see more and more and more people come up. There are people who were in this sector, this space before me. There'll be people after me because this is not going away. It's only getting larger. I was looking at this channel, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews. This guy, he had Shahrazad Ali on his channel. Shahrazad Ali has been saying the same things that a lot of men have been talking about for the past 30 years, and it's got a new resurgence. And what is she ultimately saying? That we need to have our men and our women have better respect for one another. And the conversation needs to be joined by women. Women are not our enemies. And that's the point. That's what they've tried to cast me in this misogynistic, such and so forth, blah, blah. But when you hear a woman say men are trash, you can't talk to me about misogyny. That's misandry. You talk about white supremacy and racism and all this other kind of stuff. Well, look at the first destruction of what's going on in our space. Before you can deal with the white man, you got to deal with the women who are calling you trash, and you don't want an average man, and you got to have, I don't want no scrub. See, what I won't do is I won't take my eye off of what I see the issue is. When I talk to men, they're saying the number one problem I have is trying to deal with the women I like and want. That's the biggest problem. And that's what we're talking about. And they don't like the fact that now accountability and conversation is focused on their portion. And see, the thing is, I find it funny, Vlad. It's like one thing that I get more than anything else. Well, we hear you talking about the women. Why don't you talk about the men too? I talked to the men for 3 years. It's all up. But no one wanted to hear this stuff. But when I started talking to the women, then all of a sudden it became this. Well, I look at it from a state of triage. If this is what's bleeding the most, stick with this. Don't worry about the ingrown toenail.
Right. The internet loves to tell you that you have no right even talking about a subject.
Right.
They love it. I don't know how many times I've been told that I don't have the right to speak about black issues at all. Mm-hmm. That I only need to stick to white issues or Russian issues. Mm-hmm. And it'd be ridiculous for me to tell a black person, like, okay, don't speak about white people at all. I don't want that to even enter your vocabulary.
You can't.
It's not possible. Not in America.
You can't, because if you did it, you'd be labeled a racist. And see, that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, by shutting off speech, you know, Dr. Jordan Peterson, he got thrown into the conversation too by trying to codify speech. We love telling people what they can't do when it calls us to be better, when it causes us to look at something different, you know. And that's when trying to say this person's this or this person's that, it's basically trying to take away that person's voice. It's not going to work anymore because now the masses are engaged. These conversations are happening, Vlad. My conversation initially started with, as an image consultant of men of a certain age and a certain demographic, socioeconomic status. I was at the mall in Atlanta, and I ended up taking photographs for 30 minutes with young black men, all under the age of 25, who found me on TikTok. Everywhere I go out, I'm starting to get men. Ladies, understand, you better start listening to what men are saying. It's not Kevin, and we're not your enemy. That's the takeaway. Listen, before you judge what you think you know about me, I challenge anybody to watch a broadcast end to end in good faith and then see what you come away with.
What do you say to people that call you a misogynist?
Misogynist is hatred of women. There's no way y'all can be a misogynist. You listen, if I'm a misogynist, then you go talk to the women who say, you saved my marriage. I'm the reason. I listened to your advice and now I'm engaged. The women who follow my platform, who wrote their testimonials, who make their videos, they counter your narrative. You just can't say that with a straight face. But I would say this. Let's talk about outcomes. Let's talk about results. What the people who talk about what I'm not, what I am, I want to see your videos of people making testimonials of what, following your advice, how it's changed their outcomes. Let's put it on the wood. Show your results. I'll put my results against your results, seeing as I'm not qualified to talk about it. I don't have the right degree, the right pedigree, but I got the right outcomes and right results. I'll challenge anybody on that one. And if you can't do that, then go back to the ad hominems and calling me gay and the pejoratives and all that kind of stuff, because that's all you got.
There you have it. Well, Kevin, first of all, congratulations on building a platform.
Thank you, man.
From nothing. As someone that started doing the same thing 13 years ago, I understand the daily 365-day-a-year grind that it takes to take a YouTube channel from 0 subscribers to having hundreds of thousands and then millions of subscribers and having people tune in and setting yourself aside from the millions of other people that are doing something similar and actually creating a brand and going out and doing press the way you're doing now, going on my platform, going on No Jumper, doing TI's platform and actually getting your message out there while creating content the whole time. It's not easy. It's extremely difficult, especially if you don't come from a level of celebrity already. It's a lot easier for TI to build a successful podcast than for Kevin or Vlad to do it.
Right.
We don't have multi-platinum albums and millions of fans that we can just piggyback on. But the reality is that the longer you do it, the easier it does get. You know?
I will say this. It's why I do what I do is I've always talked about this stuff, Vlad. But when that video went viral, Average at Best, you studied the business. You studied the analytics. I was already saying, well, what happens if I already understood the analytics, the background, but when that happened, I was like, this is not about me. It stopped being about me when that thing went over 300,000 views. And that's what I keep reminding people. This is not about me. I may be in front of the camera now. I don't want it to always be about me. It's about the conversation. It's about helping people get what they want. I mean, I'm going to get what I want in the long run. I'm not doing it, on this, I'm not trying to be Gandhi-like and say I'm going to forego everything. I think you should get paid very well for what you do. Shout out to the Joker. If you do something good, you should get paid for it. But I think people should also recognize that it's more good being done than your hurt feelings. What's coming out of it? So to the haters, detractors, critics, for any of us, look, go do it better. Go do it better and beat somebody on that side. But trying to silence people because you disagree, that's not what this country is. That's our First Amendment. That's our First Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to some place where you can't speak freely, go over to China.
Yeah,
go ahead
exactly.
And go ahead and make some comments about the government.
Right.
Go ahead, see what happens.
And I think it's important to, come do press and things like this. And as this thing continues to go, you're going to get hard questions, uncomfortable questions. And I think at the end of the day, if I know I'm doing this in a good faith reason, I'm not doing it to hurt anybody. I'm not doing it to be overly sensationalized. And anybody who knows me would say, he's been talking about this stuff forever. So the reason we're here right now is just my 15 minutes. There'll be somebody else. But the thing is, the people we touch, the people we help along the way, that is the legacy. So maybe my marriages did not work, but I am building a legacy in some sort of way to where I'm satisfied with the work that's being done.
There you have it. Kevin, appreciate you coming through.
Thank you.
Hope to have you again sometime in the future. Congrats on your success, man. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Peace out.
Peace.